Hello, everyone, and welcome to our webinar today. I'd like to let you know that we will get started briefly. Right now, I do want to introduce our sponsor, which is Infosec, and today we will be discussing the path from MSP to MSSP, diversifying to gain competitive advantage. Before we get started, I do want to point out a few features on our console. This webinar is being recorded, so if you miss a portion or step away, you will get a link to view this on demand. Also, this webinar is interactive. You can get your questions submitted by using the Q&A panel on your screen, and that's located right underneath the slides. We'll get to as many questions as we can, and if we don't get to your question, we'll follow up with you after today. We also have some handouts available for download in the handout section, so take a look there. And lastly, I do invite you to join the attendee chat where you can start a conversation with your fellow IT pros. And remember, with any of these sections, you can turn those off using the orange icon buttons at the bottom of your screen. So let's get started. Our speaker today is Mike Novers, Director of Global Channel Sales at Infosec. Mike Novers brings 15 years of experience in the cybersecurity industry and leads the team responsible for recruiting and managing global services and reseller partners with a focus on creative lead generation and revenue growth. So with that, Mike, I'll hand it to you to get started.
David, thanks so much. First, I'd like to thank you for having us today to do this chat and to do this webinar and talk about MSP to MSSP and how important that is in the industry today. And so again, thank you, and let's go ahead and get started. So first, let me kind of detail the agenda, right, for today, so you understand, what we're going to be talking about and what I'm going to take you through today and why it's important. So first, we're going to meet your speaker. Obviously, David just did that. Again, I have background in both IT managed services from some years ago, as well as most recently, I've worked for the last 5 years, I worked in cybersecurity awareness training, and today I'm at Infosec. So I do have a lot of background in both sides of the business that we're going to talk about today. Secondly, we're going to talk about the skills gap overview, right? There is, and you'll see where this industry is leading in terms of security and not only just the threats for employees and companies, but there's a real gap there. We'll talk a little bit about MSPs and MSSPs. Obviously, if you're on this call, you're probably an MSP today or an MSSP, or maybe you're a reseller, or maybe you're looking to move your business into a managed services business. But we'll do an analysis of really where those two businesses lie today. We'll talk a little bit about Infosec, right, and what our training solutions can help you do. Both internally and externally to your clients, right, which are both important, both very important areas to cover in terms of your internal operations and how you train and how you learn and the skills that you acquire, as well as what you offer to your clients and how you can move your business into security. And then lastly, we'll talk a little bit about Infosec as a whole, and then we'll get to those all important questions that David was talking about. So first, let's get into it. Let's talk about the cyber skills gap, right? It's interesting in my career, in my time working, there's always been, I remember years ago, when I was maybe even in college, it was like nursing was going to be the big skills gap, right? And at school, they would have everyone say, you need to go into nursing or you need to go into medical because that's going to be the next thing 5 years from now, right? So there's always these stats, and there's information out there as to what the next big thing is going to be, or where a real shortage of skilled labor is going to be. And honestly, as I've went through my career, even when I worked in IT managed services some 10 years ago, it was cloud, and where is that business going to move, and where are the people that are well versed in cloud, and then as cloud, as it really went from a break-fix business to managed services to cloud type of scenario. And now we're in a scenario where now it's moving towards security. And so there's always these interesting stats coming out about, skills shortage and where kids in college today or outside of college where they should be going to learn and where there'll be jobs for tomorrow. And this slide really incorporates that whole talking point, right? So some of these stats come from a 2018 workforce study by ISC Squared. And you can see here, 3 million unfilled cybersecurity jobs. So when you're talking unfilled, it means that there's a need for that role. There's a position for a cybersecurity role, but they can't, employers or companies cannot find people fast enough or qualified enough, right? And so I know a lot of times college students, they go into college and they say, okay, I'm going to study this. I'm going to get a degree in cybersecurity or some sort of security role. And, they can come out and they maybe can start as a entry level position, but there's still a lot of higher level positions that need to be filled within these organizations. So even though there's a lot of people studying these things and coming into the workforce, there's still higher level positions that need to be filled. When we talk about cybersecurity awareness, as part of our business today at Infosec, we always talk about companies getting breached. And obviously, whether you're in this business or outside of this business, the media does a very good job of letting everyone know when someone gets breached, right? It affects brand, it affects reputation, it affects revenues, it affects companies for a long time. But what we're also finding is, on the security awareness side, we talk about, phishing as being the number one threat vector and how employees can click on a phish and cause a breach. The other side to this is not having enough skilled cybersecurity people on staff to be able to implement and manage the different products, the different softwares, even hardwares that need to be in place to manage cybersecurity for a company, right? So while we sometimes always, the storyline is always on the cyber criminals to how they're getting access and, they're getting it through phishing or vishing or various other numerous ways. There's also a cause for concern of breaches occurring because, the security team is not up to date. The security team does not have enough people. The security team doesn't miss something, right, that caused data to be, leaked or breached or whatever you want to call it. So that's another concern that we're seeing is that a lack of cybersecurity employees can cause breaches as well. And then the third part of this we really look at is life cycle of knowledge, right? And like any position that anyone holds, right? Whether you're a doctor, whether you're a nurse, whether you're an engineer, it doesn't really matter. You always constantly have to be learning, right? Because the market changes, demand changes, customers change in terms of what they do or what their needs are. And what we see in cybersecurity is there's about a 2-year half-life for cyber skills. And so you can see this chart really maps it out. As technology changes, it's, then to now, it's changing rapidly in terms of the products and solutions that are out there. The pace of learning is still kind of on the same curve, right? And so even in people that, get hired into cybersecurity, maybe they're very knowledgeable. In a year, 2 years, things may rapidly change. You think of our smartphones, right? I go back to the days of flip phones and things like that. But when you look at even that technology, it's constantly changing. So in this cybersecurity world, we're seeing that it's constantly changing as well. So to bring those skills gaps up to the change is something that we're striving for and something we'll talk about today. So, and then the other side of this too is the 94% of executives cite a cyber skills gap, right? That is a huge number of CISOs and security managers and such that say, look, I can't find qualified people. That is a huge number. I can tell you, I just recently saw another stat to add on to this slide, and then we'll move forward. I saw another thing where 3.5 million, there'll be 3.5 million unfilled jobs in 2021, right? So we're a couple years away from it being 3.5 million. That's, to put that into perspective, in 2016, the same source was reporting 1 million jobs, right? So in the course of, a couple years, 4 or 5 years, that's tripled in terms of the shortage of cybersecurity professionals that are needed. And then to that 94% of executives stat, I also saw another stat where that cybersecurity shortage was like 5th place in terms of most important things for like CISOs and security managers. That is now number 1, right? They are seeing that there's a huge need for their staff to be better trained and better prepared for cybersecurity. So just some things to think about as we go through the rest of this presentation, because this slide is really going to lay the groundwork for what we're talking about today. So let's talk about MSPs and MSSPs, right? And today it's really talking about how do you capitalize. If you're an MSP today, how do you capitalize? How do you prepare yourself? How do you put the right steps in motion to be able to provide security services, right? And if you're not an MSP today, how do you incorporate both sides of these businesses here to create your business or to expand your business? So let's talk further about these things. So, the threat landscape or the SMB landscape, threatscape, I guess I'm jumbling them all together. We look at SMBs, right? And I can tell you 10 years ago when I worked in the IT MSP business, it was SMB. So I'm very familiar with these models. I'm very familiar with that business, and I'm very familiar with, the struggles and the successes that I've seen in this business as well. So when we look at the 2018 data breach investigation report, some interesting things. I think the perception over the last 5-7 years of, cybersecurity really hitting big and being in the media and being big news is that it's always big names, right? The media loves to put in there like, hey, this retail organization got breached, or this health insurance company got breached. And the big names make the news, right? Because it affects millions and millions and millions of people. And so that is a storyline that people will read and obviously go to news sources to read about it and also understand how it affects them, personally. The one thing I think the big storyline that a lot of people are missing is that SMBs are just as much at a threat as enterprise companies, right? And it may be even more so because enterprise companies tend to have bigger budgets and more money to put into security, whereas a lot of SMB providers or clients do not, right? Or they don't think to put those things in place. So when you look at these stats, 58% of malware victims were small businesses, right? That's across the board. So, while enterprise, yes, there's a lot of enterprise that are victim to malware attacks, 58% of them are SMBs. So that's a high number when you really think about it. 53% of SMBs suffered a data breach in 2018 alone. So, right, half of your customers today, when you think about that, maybe have suffered some sort of breach. Maybe they didn't know about it. Maybe it was a small one. Maybe you uncovered it for them, or they found it and took care of it. The average cost of a cyber attack on an SMB is roughly $80,000, right? So while that number seems small, maybe comparable to when you see the enterprise breaches and they pay $50 million and those types of things, that is a lot of money for an SMB, for a small and medium business, right? And then when we look at the other effect on SMBs, which, an enterprise can run if someone, if a group of people are off for a day or 2 days, SMBs rely on uptime, right? And all of you that are on here that are MSPs know that story. That last stat is really detrimental to SMBs because not only can the breach hurt their business in terms of monetary reasons, but downtime will kill them, right? And so 40% of SMBs had 8+ hours of downtime because of a data breach. So when you think about that, a small, medium business that, needs their doors to be open to be able to create revenue and to make money and to make payroll and to, keep their business viable, for every day that a breach causes them to be down, that's even more loss. And it's even bigger loss to their reputation with their clients and the services they provide. So these threats are real. I mean, I can't stress it enough that in the SMB world, I don't think this gets enough media play, and I don't think enough people know about it. But obviously, you can see here these stats play out. So let's do a little analysis, right, on the MSP model, and I'll flash forward. The next thing we're going to look at is the MSSP model and kind of compare the two. And again, when you look at the strengths and weaknesses and the opportunities and the threats, obviously the SWOT analysis, we'll go through some of these, and it'll probably ring true with a lot of you, because this is really the businesses you run today or the businesses you have today. So in the MSP world, like I said, I was around when break fix was moving into managed services. So that was like 2007, 2008 and forward. I saw a big change in the marketplace where, everything was about software and remote management and, how do I be proactive instead of reactive? And so when you look at the business model for MSPs, some of the strengths, obviously you can offer fixed price model, right? So you can allow SMBs to make it a operational expense instead of a capital expense, right? They can monetize, their payments over 12 months, over years to you instead of upfront cost. You offer outsourced IT department, right? SMBs, while they have their staff, they have the most critical people. It's always who supports our IT, who is going to manage our day-to-day, who's going to set up our network, who's going to fix things when they break. Obviously, that is a huge strength for your business. You streamline business procedures, right? Some of the best MSPs I've ever known, they're always looking at what their clients' needs are and how they can incorporate that into their offerings, right? And it makes it easy for that client to say, hey, you know what, we want to move to a new ticketing software, or we need new software for our accounting business, right? They become MSPs, really good MSPs becomes knowledgeable in those different products and incorporate them into their business, and then be the person that manages that for their client. When you look at the last piece on the strength, you take the pain out of the IT resource, right? For smaller organizations, you now can support them. They don't have to figure out how to pay somebody and how to, make sure that person stays with them. It's a great strength for MSPs. Now, when we look at weaknesses, obviously you need higher skilled and experienced staff that can be expensive on your end, right? And with that comes, you're paying them a lot of money for their knowledge. But one of the things we'll talk about is how do you keep that knowledge fresh and how do you keep it up to date? You need continuous training, right, on issues and technology, not only on the IT side, but now security, which we'll talk about next. And then setting up the right relationships with data centers and related services, right? I can tell you in the MSP world, it's always a struggle for MSPs. One of the lessons I learned years ago was that an MSP told me that, you know what, I get a ton of emails and phone calls a day from everyone trying to sell me the new whiz-bang thing that I need to incorporate into my business, right? So one of the weaknesses is that you're getting approached by a lot of different vendors that are trying to sell a lot of different products, and that can somewhat take up an MSP's time of resources for their clients and also direction for their clients. Now, when we get into opportunities, you look at a growing need for managed security services as SMBs move to manage applications and SaaS, right? So SMBs obviously are getting more knowledgeable, I think, just because of public knowledge of how products can help their business. And so there's an opportunity there, right, for you to learn those things and also be prepared for them as new products, new services, new ideas come along to your client. You're going to say, listen, I have knowledge on that. I can be that provider for you. Pay-as-you-go model, obviously, the MSPs on this call today understand that model. It allows your clients, obviously, to, again, be operational and not capital expense. It allows them for you to bill them monthly. It makes their cash flow much better, which in turn makes your cash flow much better, right? And then the threats, obviously, cloud services for email and other applications can become a threat as well as an opportunity. And that's simply because more companies, and it's the old adage of, the big vendors that go direct to your client. Obviously, that can be a threat, but those big vendors also can provide some great services for you as well. And then also, always the biggest threat, whether you're an SMB or whether you're an enterprise or really anywhere, is budget restrictions. And in the SMB world, it doesn't take much for them to lose budget or to have to reduce budget simply because they lose a client or they lose some clients or something happens in their business. So that is a real threat as well. So we've laid out the MSP model. And again, I'm probably speaking to the choir here, preaching to the choir. For you that run businesses today, a lot of these things meet how your business runs today, and you understand what I'm talking about. So let's move forward to the MSSP business model, right? The strengths in being a managed security service provider is that you can have in-house specialists, right? That are specialized to security to be an asset to your clients, right? And not only is that an asset to your clients, it's also a huge asset to your business as well, because it's going to make you a little bit stickier, and I'll explain that as we go. Teams that focus on being security aware to mitigate across the modern cyber threat landscape. Again, if you're a small MSP and you have 5 employees, even if you have one of those employees that's security minded and security trained, that gives you a hands up over the competition to say, I have someone on staff that knows these things and that can meet with you and set the right path for your business. Certified individuals, right? A lot of times with security, there's different certifications, there's different learning paths that they can go down, that they can become certified in. And again, that always adds to your business know-how. It makes your clients feel, obviously that you're prepared and that your staff can accommodate their needs. And then also having a wider portfolio builds a stronger offering, right? And one of the things, some of the slides we'll get to, is really talking about that in terms of now being able to say to your client, hey, we are secure, we do have security knowledge, and not getting passed over for another MSSP to manage their security business. Some of the weaknesses, again, you need highly skilled people, and that can be expensive, just like IT. And then the other part of it is you need continuous training. And I think that's a reality no matter what analysis you do, is that any good business is going to keep their people up to date. It's going to make sure that they are trained, that they know the latest and greatest things that are happening in the marketplace, and can speak to those things and then actually put them in place. Opportunities on the security side, obviously there's a growing need for managed security services. SMBs, owners, business leaders in the SMB market, they're reading the same thing that you're reading, that everyone's reading now. It's not a big secret like it used to be in terms of how do I manage my network, and they're becoming very knowledgeable. And when they see all these security threats, like any business owner, their biggest concern is risk, right? What is it a risk to my business? Like, what would happen if, just like when I was back in IT, it was backup and disaster recovery, right? What happens if my business catches on fire and I'm a provider? Where does that data reside? As a client, where does their data reside? How do they continue their business? What is that whole process that we put in place to get them back up and running? Well, same thing happens with security now. They're thinking, what if I do get breached? What if ransomware hits me and I can't get to any of my files for a week, and I'm losing clients, or they're calling me, and what happens in that scenario? So that is an opportunity that business owners and SMB leaders are thinking about. Another opportunity, data protection compliance, right? That is a whole other world where SMBs are starting to have more requirements in terms of how they handle data, how they protect their data. And those are requirements that are governed sometimes by different organizations, or depending on what your client does. Think like accounting, right? How do they meet some compliancies? Data privacy is growing expectations from customers, right? Customers, again, are reading the same thing we're all reading in the media. So they say, hey, you have all my data. how do you protect that? Where is it? What if someone breached you? Can they get all my stuff? Can they get my financials? Can they breach me, right? The other opportunities, SMB struggle to find in-house cybersecurity and data, specialists and services. So that is another piece, right? And then the other piece is cloud and cybersecurity tend to get more budget, right? So they have more spending a lot of times in those opportunities. And then the last piece is threats, obviously. Specialist security services that offer managed security services. So if you're an MSP today, one of your other threats beyond all these other things that I'm talking about is the MSSP down the street, right? That is approaching your clients and saying, look, I can provide all your security services and maybe your IT services, right? And so your client may say, well, you know what? I know my MSP does all of our IT stuff. I'm not quite sure where they're at on security. And so, sure, come talk to me, right? That is a huge threat to the MSPs today. And then the other thing is obviously SMB budget restrictions, which is probably going to be there for centuries to come. So these two models really give you can see how they compare. You can see how they kind of overlap. Obviously, there's a little bit of differences in both, but it's interesting to see how many similarities they have, but then also how many differences they have as well. So the evolution of MSPs, right? And I've already talked about this a little bit in my background, in my history. MSPs over the last 10 years have really grown to, make their businesses functional in a way that, and I know MSPs today that years ago they were break fix. So they literally would break, fix anything that would break. They would come on site. They would do billable hours. Okay, I was on site for 4 hours. I'm billing you this much. I fixed your issue. And then they wait for the next server to go down, right? MSPs have really transitioned to a point where now they will only take clients that will have proactive services, that will only have services that are remote or managed. And, they'll still go on site if they have to do hardware fixes or something. But the evolution has really come to a point where MSPs have a nice model of recurring revenue month over month to build their business, to build their clientele, and to run their business, right? So really, SMBs will always continue, I think, to look for managed service providers to manage everything for them. And I think that's going to continue on. But we've seen over the last years that's really increased. And ultimately, partly because of security. As these breaches happen, it causes SMB owners to say, hey, I need to cover myself with this. We need to investigate who can manage this for us. So it's driving that need. They're also looking, and again, I just bullet point number 2, they're looking at MSP providers that provide security services. And then really, this is a huge opportunity. Again, the MSSP market is predicted to grow by almost 15% before 2023. So I read a lot of things. I see a lot of things on LinkedIn. I see a lot of vendors talking about things. I see a lot of independent people that have been in the channel for years and, worked with MSPs. And the number one overwhelming thing that I read is that whole, moving from just traditional IT into security. And it's not, I compare it to when cloud came along. It was all, software as a service, and then cloud was going to be everything. Host everything on a data center somewhere. That, it did happen to a degree, but I can tell you it's overwhelming how much I see this storyline of security is big in the SMB market, and you have to be prepared. That is the one thing I keep seeing is that MSPs need to be prepared and move towards security. So let's talk about the transition. And, I call it an MSP to MSSP transition. I don't know if I really like that word, but, when we think about that, we should, why should MSPs consider making the transition to MSSP? What do they need to make this transition? I honestly would rather not call it a transition. I see there's a huge opportunity for MSPs to really do an MSSP addition, right? So it's not transitioning your current business from the IT, model, right? Your clients are still going to need IT resources. They're still going to have networks to set up. They're still going to have hardware needs and those everyday, IT needs that an SMB needs. But this time now really gives you an opportunity to transition or make an addition of MSSP, right? So you're in a good spot where you can say, look, I'm a very experienced MSP. I've been running this business for 10, 20 years now. My people are on reoccurring services. I manage everything, through software and remotely, and I take care of backup and their disaster recovery and all these other things. Now I can keep that business running and add the security side of it, right? So when we look at adding the security side of it, you have to look at IT and security training, right? IT and security skills for your internal staff, right? And how do you train your staff? And then really, who are the equipment and vendor partnerships that you need in this space, right? And those are the things you have to kind of think about where it's like, hey, I can run my IT side of it while I'm doing this addition of security. So I don't really see it as you having to transition into managed security services provider. It's really you can kind of become both or meet both needs for your clients. So when we look at that, right, you start with training for you and your team, right? Your clients need educated, knowledgeable people to manage security risk. And that's where I can tell you this conversation is going to come from the client that says, look, you do a great job with my IT. Where do you rank on security? And for you to be able to say as a MSP owner or leader, you know what, we have 2 people on staff that have taken these certifications or have these skills that can come in and do an assessment of your business and really put into play other cybersecurity needs opposed to just endpoint and like firewalls, right? Because we all know that's kind of the IT side of it where you do firewalls, you do endpoint protection, antivirus, that kind of thing. But now you can have someone go in and say, yeah, I'm certified, or you know what, let me map out a security structure for you and the things that you need as an SMB to cover you and to protect you, right? Part of this is finding the correctly trained staff. That can be a challenge. You can either go out and try to hire somebody that just comes out of school or the military or somewhere, or you can say, you know what, out of my staff today, who has the acumen, who has the desire or interest to get more knowledgeable about these cybersecurity topics and really, increase their skills and maybe even get them into certification, right, to meet those needs for your clients. And really, this is, again, where security training and certification can give you a head start. And as we go through the rest of this, we'll talk to it. So some of the recommended training and skills, some of these look familiar probably to some of you. Some of you know about them. Some of you may do some of them today, right? So these are recommended in terms of the path you would need to go down to meet other cybersecurity needs for your client that maybe are a little bit more in depth than just, like I said, firewalls and antivirus and endpoint protection. So you talk about email security, right? That is a big concern today because obviously there's a lot of email transacted with SMBs. We rely on it very heavily. So again, more detailed, more protection on email security is probably number one, right? Phishing is the number one threat vector. So obviously that makes sense. Network protection, right? You do that to some degree already today on the IT side of setting up networks and securing them. But, what are the advanced securities that you need for networks? Endpoint protection, right? Is it meeting the need? What you're using today for your client, is it meeting their needs, right? Is it the right thing for the right client? Incident response planning, right? So much like I talked about disaster recovery on the IT side some years ago, if something happened to their business, now it's not even about their business burning down. It's about what if their business gets disrupted by a security breach. So that is a whole other piece. What is that incident response? how do you keep their business up and running? How do you respond? How do you take care of their business? How do you take care of the breach or the issue and get them back up and running or keep them running? General security awareness training and education, right? Not only are you going to become the expert, but you also want your clients to be knowledgeable about cybersecurity. And when I say clients, I'm talking about the business owners, the business leaders, and the employees, right? And I'm sure all of you have seen security awareness training, how important it is to make the employees understand that, hey, that email is bad, or don't open that attachment, or don't wire that money overseas to your CFO, and those types of things. We hear those stories all the time. So again, that's a key part of what on file cabinets, and yeah, they have some computer work. There's HIPAA things in there now, right? There's requirements of how they protect that data, how they protect their user information. So all those things come into play as well. And then cybersecurity insurance. One thing I recommend is you don't have to become an expert in it, but it's a good thing for you to understand, and maybe even partner with a firm that does cybersecurity insurance, or at least point your clients down that path. Because while all these things that you can provide, when an incident does happen, how is your client going to pay you to fix things or protect things? So cybersecurity insurance is an important part of the piece as well. So when we look at, those are the recommended skills and items that you need for an MSSP, let's look at certifications, right? So when you're thinking, okay, I've got 10 technicians on staff, I can take one of them. I know Bob, as an example. Bob is he has an interest in cybersecurity, and I want to have him get certified in certain things, right? I can tell you this list is in kind of order of what we as a company at Infosec feel is most important, which would be CompTIA Network Plus Security, Security Plus, and then Cloud Plus to start. These are good certifications because they will take you in depth in terms of security to understand the needs of your clients, but also give you a great certification that when you go into that room, when you go in to have that meeting with your client, you can say, look, they're certified in these three things, right off the bat, right? And that gives your client some understanding that you do take it seriously, and that this technician understands, what they're doing for you. So these other certifications obviously get more intense, but again, they're great things for your users to work towards. So let's talk about our training solutions, right? Because this is important to understand where Infosec fits into all this. So today, Infosec, we've been around since 2004. We have a great history in the certification side of the business. So when I was talking about those CISSPs and Network Plus and Security Plus and Cloud Plus, you can see here the stats: 160,000 students, been taught, 2.6 million training hours, 185 countries with students in them that have taken our certifications. You can read these stats. Obviously, we have a great background. We have a great reputation on the certification side of the business. We've been doing it for 15 years now, and that's a little background on where we come from in our history. When we look at the products that we offer today, right, there's really three levels, and we're really the only provider in this space that, when you talk about security awareness space especially, that can expand the horizons, or broaden the horizons for yourselves as MSPs or for your clients. And so when we look at this pyramid, we have Infosec Flex, which is our certifications. That's the higher level certifications for people at the top, professionals. We have our Infosec Skills. This is an online platform that has 300 self-paced cybersecurity skills courses. This is a great, I can tell you the skills piece is a great opportunity for MSPs because it is a subscription and it's self-paced, and it's a great way for you to go to your employee that you want to train, or the employees that you want to train. It might be your whole team, and say, look, here's your logins, here's the courses that I want you to brush up on. Or they can go in and say, you know what, I want to go on a certain career path, and I'm going to take these certain certifications that I want to grow with. And then our Infosec IQ, this is our security awareness and phishing solution. Again, we have 2,000 plus awareness resources, phishing simulations. Think of this as the product that you use for your end clients, right? Where you're phishing them, training those employees to understand cybersecurity breaches, understanding what they need to do on the day-to-day to protect themselves. So again, we are really the only ones in this marketplace that offer all three levels of training and cybersecurity skills awareness for not only you as an MSP, but also for your clients. So when we talk about, Infosec IQ, it's really about educating and empowering employees, right? That is the message. It's not so much scare tactics of, hey, Bob in accounting, if you click on this, that's a bad thing. And, we want to empower people to understand where they fit in cybersecurity. We want to empower people to learn and be better, security people, really, when you think about it. So we talk about adopting better cybersecurity habits. We talk about engaging training and assessments, and make it, interesting for them, make it enjoyable to a degree. How can they report simulated or real phishing emails, right? That's important. And then really, how do they become active contributors, right? How do they help you as an MSP better protect that whole business, right? Because if they're learning the right things to do and the things to look out for, that's only going to make your job maybe a little bit easier, but also make it a bit more airtight, right? Because it's helping you add that level of protection that a lot of companies don't think about. How it's done, again, we have a platform. It's very easy for you to manage, where you can have all your clients. You can manage the phishing piece of it. You can manage the training piece of it. We give you, unlimited resources really here. When you talk about phishing, you talk about all of our training modules. Our reporting is very nice for MSPs because it makes it very easy for you to get executive reports or get the information you need to present to your clients. And then also, we do a lot of integration and automation as well. So it's a platform that our partners can manage and use to implement with their clientele. So when we talk about skills, our Infosec Skills, it's really based on the CyberSeek model, right? NICE's CyberSeek model. And it's really think of skills as a great tool for your employees internally, right? Low cost, really, when you look at it for training, to get your users at least to dip their toe in the water of security and start learning things. You don't have to go the full certification path. I mean, that's a nice thing if you say, look, I have a really experienced person here. I want them to become a CISSP, right? There's pieces to that are valuable. But skills really gives your employees a better way to go in and self-paced learn on cybersecurity topics that are pertinent to their job every day and pertinent to your company. When you look at some of the roles here, we have cybersecurity manager, we have cybersecurity engineer, cybersecurity architect. We map out the skills path, right? What are the things you need to take? What are the things you need to learn while you're in the system to lead you towards a certification path, right? So these are just a couple of them. We have many of them actually that break down what your users would need to learn internally to better, train themselves and be prepared. When we look at the product as a whole, again, it's an online platform, 300 plus courses today. We're adding more and more to it. 40 plus learning paths. Again, for an employee to say, okay, this is the path I want to go on. This is the learning I'm going to do to get to a certification. And then hands-on training, right? So we have hands-on labs that are real labs, right? So these are hosted in the cloud. Your employees can go learn hands-on, right? It's not just so much watching a video. We know that that's valuable, but our labs really make it really valuable for you to go and for them to do hands-on learning that they may not encounter until you get some more security customers. The last couple pieces here, when we look at Tom, right? This is a great example of where skills fits into place. Tom is a help desk technician. He is one of your employees today. Maybe he likes breaking things. Maybe he has a curiosity for different solutions. Tom enrolled, as an example, in a CEH boot camp to prepare for pen testing for one of your clients, right? He did that learning. A month later, he has a new project, right? The great thing about skills as well is that if you have a customer that comes to you with a need for something, skills, your employees can very easily go in, find the skill that they need to learn and learn enough about it, right, to be able to answer questions for that client. So think of it as something on the run or something on the fly where you maybe need to learn something very quickly. Or maybe it's a bigger project where you say, okay, I need to map out all the things I need to know to be able to fulfill this project for my client. Again, Tom, after practicing in the cyber range, he's ready to start the project, right? He's also logged 28 or 20 CP hours towards his 3-year requirement, right? So again, they're gaining some other valuable things out of doing the cyber skills trainings. And then again, a new contract comes in the next quarter, right? On a different type of product or a different type of need. Now Tom can go back into his skills, find the things that he needs to learn for this one-off project maybe, and fulfill that for your client and fulfill that for you as a business owner, right? And then obviously you can point Tom down a path of saying, look, you've been doing great on these projects. You've been doing great on your learning. Now, where can we put you? Where do you want to be our cybersecurity manager? Let's get you a certification. Let's put you in the right path to make you very valuable for our customers, but also very valuable for your business, right? And also very valuable for Tom, because now Tom is going to say, you know what, you've invested in me. I'm not going to leave, right? I want to stay here. I want to grow this business. I want to be your cybersecurity manager. I'm not going to go take a certification on my own without you knowing, get those letters after my name, and then go out on LinkedIn and find another job, right? We just talked about the skills gap and that everyone's looking for professionals. So this also helps make Tom a little bit stickier to your business now that you've helped him, be certified and be a cybersecurity professional. So, I can't stress enough where our 3 layers of products really come into play, right? Think of skills as an employee, teaching your employees the day-to-day. Employees that are great technical employees, maybe it's enhancing their knowledge of things they already know, right? Our skills courses are always updated. We're always adding new things to it. So it's a great product for you to utilize to get your team beefed up on security and move, again, not so much transition, but make that addition for MSSP work that you can now acquire from clients. And then think of the, on the certification side of it, again, we have a great history there. It allows your employees to become certified using the same products that they've already, learned from. And then the cybersecurity awareness obviously comes into play, not only for the rest of your employees. Maybe if you're a bigger MSP outside of your technicians, you want to train your people internally on how to protect your own business, but then also how do you incorporate that into services for your clients? So again, they can become more security minded and help you as a provider protect that business. So again, when I'm looking here, the slide, again, tailored team training on the certification side. This is the Flex. It's important that, again, you remember that, our Flex courses are also all online. So this isn't something where you have to schedule them to go somewhere for a week. It doesn't have to be some local course that you're taking at a community college for a day. All of our certifications can be taken online as well. And again, we have 100+ different boot camps, right? So not only some of the needs that I laid out before are important, but there's a lot of other ones as well. So it's a great opportunity for you to sit down with your staff and say, okay, where do we want to go with this? What boot camps are important to us? And, who are the employees that are going to progress in the cybersecurity world? So again, Flex, Skills, IQ, all 3 of them wrapped up in a nice bundle for you as a provider to utilize for your internal use and then also utilize for your clients, which again is going to be probably the most beneficial because that's where you run your business. So again, just to rehash, and then we'll get into some questions. We see ourselves as the right security education right now, right? Because when you look at this from SMB to enterprise, so if you have bigger clients, you have smaller clients, all these really come into play, right? Flex and skills for your IT and security pros. And if you have bigger clients that have their own security teams, this is an offering that you can offer them as well, right? So maybe you're supporting a bigger team. You can go to them and say, look, we'll sell you skills, right? We'll sell you certifications. And that's only going to strengthen your relationship. It's only going to help, you solve bigger problems you may be supporting them on. And then on the SMB side, obviously, these internal for yourselves make you very valuable to those SMBs. And then Infosec IQ really reaches everyone. So if you have enterprise clients, their end users need trained. If you have SMB clients, their users need trained, right? So again, all three of these offerings are available to you as part of our partner program. Makes it very valuable for you to grow your business and to really make that addition, again, not the transition, but make that addition from being an MSP, a very good MSP, to being a very great MSP/MSSP, to be able to grow your business and provide those security services that your clients need today. So with that, I think we're at the end here. Again, just a little bit about us. We have a long storied background in this business. We take training very seriously in terms of our clients, our customers, our partners. Our goal really is to make people security minded, help people be prepared for this ever-changing world we live in, where security affects all of us on a personal level, on a professional level, on a business level. So again, a little bit about us. We take this very seriously. So with that, I thank you, and we'll have David get into the questions. I think we got about 10 minutes left.
All right, let's get over to the first question here. In a previous webinar, there was a discussion about cyber certifications. Would you agree with the assessment that IT and security should be separate teams that work in conjunction with each other?
Well, for an MSP, I mean, if you're talking internally, yeah, I think it's good to have certain team members, right, that are cybersecurity minded, but I would think they would come from the IT side, in terms of your internal business. I think it's important that how they kind of mesh together between IT and security needs. It's important that everyone's on the same page there. So you could have separate teams, but ultimately I would grow your cybersecurity professionals out of your IT team, right? IT is really where it starts, and then the security is kind of the next layer in terms of the team knowledge or how it operates.
All right, this next one is, are there any demos or overviews that can give some information about training and help someone determine if it's viable?
Yeah, so all of our products actually, if you have a need right now, you can again reach us there at partners@infosecinstitute.com. We have trials on all the products. On the IQ side, client can go in and do some phishing and training on a trial basis. On the skills platform, we can give you access to go in and look at the skills, take some of the courses and see what it covers. And then even on the Flex side, we can give you access so you can kind of see the whole library and the content, and it gives overviews of the different certifications that we have. So yes, the trials are available.
All right, so Tom is asking, what size of business do you define as SMB, like an approximate of number of seats or users?
Yeah, so SMB, I mean, I know this this always gets bandied around because some people go by revenue, some people go by size of clients. We tend to go by seats. Obviously SMB, I would say, is anyone probably in the 500 seat and below. in terms of number of seats that they're managing, and that could be across, all their clients as an MSP, or even an individual client. I think when you get into that level, 500 and above, and 1,000 and so forth, you're getting into a much bigger play. Probably, I would call that more SME, like small to medium enterprise business, than an SMB. But yeah, so I would say 500 users and below. But again, all of our solutions even work for someone that has 100 users and below. So I don't want to put a number on you to think like, okay, these aren't going to work for my small clients. By all means, we have partners that have 50 user clients, 100 user clients that use these solutions and find great benefit out of them. So
all right, let's get to this one here. How can I tell if my clients need or want security services?
Well, that's a good question. I mean, I think one of the things that I see a lot of MSPs do is like an assessment, right? Assessment of their business, assessment when they're going in to meet on the IT side of it, right? I know MSPs either do monthly or usually quarterly at the least, meetings with their clients to kind of go over, what services you're providing, what you have in place. It's really doing an assessment of their business and maybe what their needs are, and then ultimately what you're finding, in the marketplace in terms of vendors and other types of services. Are these incorporated into their business? What is their business? Some businesses have more requirements than others in terms of cybersecurity needs. So I would do an assessment. There's a lot of assessments out there that you can do in terms of checking the box on different things that they have. But yeah, I mean, honestly, it's an open conversation to understand, how they're running their business today. What are their data protection needs? Some of those things that I had offered. What is their endpoint protection needs? What is their email security needs in terms of the business that they run? Those are usually open-ended questions that you'll get response back from the client in terms of where they feel the importance is, or where they determine maybe where their risk is. But then you can also point them in that direction to say, look, you're not covering these 3 or 4 things that are needed on the security side.
All right, another question from Tom. What would you recommend for courses for an MSP who maintains clients in the 2 to 100 seat range and limited budgets in rural areas?
In terms of courses, I mean, the security awareness side, the Infosec IQ was, again, really the product of the offering for the client, right? And that is, I would recommend Security IQ as a start, because that is training their end users. That scales from clients that have 20 users to 100 users, or whatever it may be. And honestly, it helps beyond limited budgets for other cybersecurity needs. When you're talking about advancing their network or their endpoint, or data protection needs and those types of things that they may not have budget for, at the very least, you can train all their employees on how to protect themselves and how to protect the business. And that'll, reduce or limit some of the risk right off the bat if they don't have the budget.
All right, let's get one more question in, and this is a really popular one. What certification should we start with first?
That's an interesting question. I honestly think the best thing to do is skills. So for your internal employees, like if you're looking to train some of your technicians or all of them, skills is very easy to implement, right? Again, it's a subscription service. It is not, it's priced friendly for MSPs to be able to buy internally. That is a great tool to use at first to get some basic training, right? And kind of lay the groundwork for certification. I would buy that for if I was an MSP, I would buy that for my employees first, let them go in and look at the career paths or the cyber, paths there that they can meet. And then get them taking some of those trainings, right? And then certification wise, again, like I had said before, Network Plus, Security Plus, and Cloud Plus right off the bat are probably the easier ones to take and accomplish. CISSP, while, you know, again, you can accomplish it, there's some requirements and there's some work level requirements there and things that you need. But to start off with on certification, I would do skills. I'd get them into skills. It's only going to grow their knowledge and kind of put them on a career path. But then I would definitely look at, if you have somebody that's already there and you're saying certification, I would do the Network Plus, Security Plus, and Cloud Plus right off the bat.
All right, well, that's about our time for today for questions. I know we didn't get to all of them, so we'll follow up with you after today. Mike, I want to hand it to you for final closing, and then we'll wrap up.
Yeah, so David, thank you so much for this opportunity. I always love speaking on this stuff because, again, it's we live in an ever-changing cybersecurity world and IT world that, you know, we're all accustomed to, but I love always talking about these different things. I'm, again, open to having a conversation, a deeper conversation with anybody that's joined today. Feel free to reach out to me again at partners@infosecinstitute.com. We'll schedule a call to talk about your needs and where you can go on a, you know, on a path here, and, you know, help you, again, make that addition to MSSP, and then also help with your needs for your clients on the cybersecurity awareness side.
All right, well, thank you, Mike, for your presentation today. A lot of great information. Remember, everyone, you can download some handouts if you go to that section in your console. And we want to also thank Infosec for sponsoring this great webinar. I want to thank everyone for attending today. So until the next partner webinar, we wish you a good day, and we look forward to another session. Take care, all.